Your car guy here. Today we're going to change the front brakes on 2007 GMC Yukon Denali. This will be the same process whether you have the Suburban, the Yukon, the Tahoe. Now you'll notice I've already taken off the wheel. I do have the vehicle supported on jack stands. Wheels are chocked, making sure that it's safe first. Now these pads have just started to squeal, and I don't know if you can see how thin they are through there, but I'll pull them out to where you can get a good view. First things first, we're going to take off this bolt here and this bolt here, get the brake caliper out of our way. Then we're going to take out the two bolts that hold this bracket off, which there'll be one right here and behind and another one down lower there. And then we'll have to take out this star bolt to remove the brake rotor. I'm removing the brake rotors because I'm going to change them out. One of these is warped. They've got a little bit of, you can see the waviness across here. And you can have them turned until they get turned to a certain point, and then they're have to be replaced. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and replace them because when you're pushing on the brakes, you get a little bit of a pulsation. Clear sign of a warped brake rotor. So we're just going to put two new brake rotors on it. All right. So to take out the two caliper bolts, I'm going to use a 19mm socket and just break them loose. You will note that there is back here another head. Sometimes you'll have to use a wrench right here because that's the sliding bolt that allows the brakes to adjust. We're just going to simply break it loose with that 19mm socket. If you got one with a long handle, it certainly gives you some more leverage, so you're not going to bust your knuckles. Well, once you have them loose, you can simply pull them out by finger. Like I said, if they're really tight in there, you may have to hold with a wrench on this side. And that's usually a sign that you have an issue with your threads, but for the most part you should be able to just loosen them up with the ratchet and then take them out by hand. And you know, these aren't too bad because the last guy that did these brakes did a good job. I know him real well. I won't tell you who he is, but anyway, we'll simply do that, and then we're going to take, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick a pry bar in here before I actually pull this off, and I'm going to pry into the rotor, so I can use a long screwdriver or a pry bar, and I'm going to pull towards me, so this way. What that's going to do is it's going to help compress those pistons before I ever take it off and get me so I'm freed up and much easier to do the brakes. I don't always recommend this if you're reusing your rotors. In this case, I'm replacing the rotors. If you're gentle, you can get away with it. You'll see there's two spots, so you do have two pistons. If you look, there's one and two pistons in here, so it's even pressure. So if you pull in both of these slots as you do that, it'll come nice and easy. So when I say I'm going to pry, I'm going to just simply stick that in there, get it into the rotor, and just pry a little bit. And what that does is it loosens up to where everything comes off a little bit easier. You can also just take and pry underneath and pry it off, and then we'll compress the piston. So now, brake rotor, when you take it off, there's some things to look at. Now, I see something that's going to be an issue later. So you see this broken boot right here? That boot means that's going to allow dust into this piston. So we're going to have to be careful and make sure that piston slides back in. If this piston is sticky and doesn't want to go back in all the way, it'll be time to replace this caliper, because this is a dust cover to help keep dust from getting to the O-ring seals behind there. And if dust gets to those O-ring seals, it can end up causing the O-ring to leak, and then you have a brake leak and you're going to have some problems. So something to look at. When we go to compress this, we're going to put the old brake pad in position there over it, and we're going to use a C-clamp to press this, squeeze it, and pull those pistons back in. Now they should both go back in nice and smooth. Now you can see this brake pad is nice and worn, and it is the inside brake pad, and you see this little tab sticking out of that hole? That's the squealer, and this thing just recently started making all kinds of noise, even when you're not touching the brakes, which is exactly what is there to warn you that it is time to do brakes. And you know, you want to do it before your pistons or your pads get into the metal of the rotor, or you'll destroy the rotors. In this case, we're replacing the rotors anyway, but it was definitely time. It gave us fair warning. That's what we like. Now I want you to notice something. These brake pads simply slide in from the side here in these slots, so you can pull them out. You have good easy access. Now you'll see our outside pad has a lot more meat on it. The reason why is that the pistons are on the inside, so they're pressing on the inside, and we don't always get even wear across the brakes. Now, some other things to look at. You see we've got some cracking and checking across these. Those are things that are going to cause noise and have other issues. So it's definitely time that you want to replace these brakes. Now I'm going to take off both of these, and I had actually replaced these previously with one from AutoZone Duralast Gold brake pads, which have a lifetime warranty, which means I'm going to take these in and get a free pair of brakes. Now we're going to take out our 2 caliper mounting bolts, or I should say for the bracket mounting bolts. These are an 18 millimeter, not a 19 millimeter, and you're going to have one on the bottom, one on the top. These may be a little tighter. You may need some extra leverage to get these out, but once you get them out, then you can simply remove this bracket. All right, once we have the bracket out of our way, then we can remove the brake rotor retaining bolt, and then if the rotor doesn't break free, that's what these holes are for right here. They're threaded so that you can run bolts into them to actually jack the brake rotor off of the hub there, and it'll come right out for you. So you just put a bolt in each side and tighten them evenly, and it'll push that off. So we'll go to the point of removing our bracket, our caliper mounting bracket, and then I'll get the Torx bit out and show you what size we are here. All right, we've got our caliper bracket out. A couple of things to notice. So here we have another little torn boot. Now it's important to note, make sure that these slide in and out easily, because that torn boot can allow dirt to get in, which can cause this to stick so it can't slide in and out of here. This is what allows the brakes to adjust right here. They're self-adjusting. So as the piston clamps, it slides the whole bracket in and out to allow the brakes to stay aligned and keep a nice even wear. So if you have an issue where these are sticking, you can take these out. You can get them, undo them from the boot, pull them out, clean out that, put a little bit of lube in there to make sure it stays lubed, so a little bit of grease is nice, or something along those lines. With a torn boot, you're probably going to get some dirt and dust in there, and odds are eventually you either need to replace the boot or the whole bracket. If you can't get just the boot, you should be able to find the boots. It may take a little bit more work, but you should be able to find them. Now, we did take out our center here, our caliper, or I'm sorry, our rotor bolt. That's a T30 Torx. And then I simply I didn't have to use the jacking bolts, took the nice plastic handle there, so it's nothing hard, just tapped it, it broke loose. And so now we're able to simply remove the brake rotor. We'll tear it down, we'll go get our new parts, and then we'll put it back together. Okay, so I'm going to show you, this is how you set up your C-clamp. I've used my old brake pad here in the center. I've got my C-clamp set up, and then I'm simply going to twist this handle in order to push both of the pistons back into place. Don't rush it. You can go kind of slow and everything will be fine. Just make sure you get them compressed all the way. If they don't go in nice and easy, if they stick, it's time to put a new brake caliper on. And that's how it should look with them fully compressed. You'll see they're almost flush with the caliper, but that's what you're looking for. Okay, I got my new brake pads. Now these were free to me because I bought these previously at AutoZone. They're Duralast Max. They're their nice kit. Comes with the brake pads and the new hardware to install them. Comes with a little bit of brake lube as well. I've also bought some brake cleaner. Lucas brand, not that it matters really. I bought it because it was on sale. So that's why I bought that. I've got a couple of new Duralast brake rotors gonna put on. First thing I got to do with these though is I've got to clean these surfaces because they're covered with a film of oil that needs to be cleaned off before you install them. So you're this surface here, and on the back side, that same surface on the back of the rotor has to be clean in order to allow the brake pads to bite in. Otherwise you're going to have some stopping issues, as this little bit of oil that they put to keep these from rusting while they're being stored will absorb into your brake pads. So we'll take these out. We're going to clean them with the brake clean, which is just a matter of spraying them off, getting them clean, and then we'll put them on. Something to note as we're putting it on, make sure you line up the hole for your brake rotor mounting bolt on the right spot so you don't have to take it off and move it again. Okay, we put our brake rotor on. We've tightened up this little T30 Torx. Don't over tighten that. You don't want to break it. It's not going to be a terrible deal if you do, but don't do it. Next, we're going to put on our bracket. Now, I'm going to pop off this hardware here because my kit came with new hardware. It's not critical if you didn't get new hardware. And then I'm going to mount it before I put the new hardware on. Reason for that is that I tend to, while I'm mounting, I can knock it back off, and then it's just an aggravation and in the way. Now, it's real easy to install this because all it's going to do is just slide over like so, and then we're going to install our 2 bolts to mount it. Remember, those have the 18mm heads, and then we will torque those to specs. Please look up your torque specs online, and the reason I tell you that is in case your vehicle's slightly different or your torque specs have changed. You can see it sitting on there pre-torque. Now, if you don't have a torque wrench, just get them really tight, okay? And make sure you have something with enough leverage. Now that we have the bracket mounted, we'll simply slide over and press in our hardware here, which just presses right into place, right in the bracket there. You'll do the top and the bottom, and then you can install your pads. And all in all, it's a pretty simple, easy job. Just press them in and then install the brake pads. Brake pads, what you're going to want to do, something to look at. So you're going to have 2 different styles of brake pad in your kit. If you look, you have the one with the curved bottom and the one with the straight bottom. The straight bottom has the brake squealer, which needs to go on the inside. Curved bottom is going to go outside, meaning that this brake pad will go to the inside towards the vehicle, and the other one will go to the outside away from the vehicle. This is because the inside is going to wear faster, and it's the one that needs to warn you. Installing the brake pads is pretty simple. You're just going to come from the outside, shove them in flat and flush. Same thing on the rear. It's going to come in and sit in place. Then you're simply going to take and put your caliper back over your brake pads, and then once you have your caliper on, you will go ahead and install the caliper bolts. So this may be a little bit tight because with brand new brakes it's going to be out to its full limits, but we'll get that thing pushed on into place with its tight limit there. Then we'll put our 2 caliper mounting bolts in and tighten them up. Alright, new brakes are in place, calipers in place, we've got everything tightened up. There's one last step that you need to do, and you need to do both sides, and then you need to get inside the vehicle and pump the brake pedal. The reason why is that when we back this off, we have reset the brakes, and we need to make sure that they are tight to the rotors. Pumping the brake pedal will adjust them, and then you're good to go. Don't forget, torque your lug nuts when you install them. Look up your factory recommended specifications. It'll either be in your owner's manual or you can find it online. Please torque them if you can. If you can't, make sure you get them tight enough but not too tight. You can strip or break these, and you don't want to do that. It's a pain to replace. So please, if you don't have a torque wrench, hey, you can get by, but if you can borrow one, go ahead and borrow one. This is your car guy. This is the brakes on the 2007 GMC Yukon Denali, and it wasn't that bad. Pretty simple job. Please subscribe, like, and share our videos, and help us grow the channel.